The first week of the year is almost in the books. Welcome to All Things People, Power, and Politics. This is The Pulse. I'm Roop Raj. New crime stats from the Detroit Police Department give us a closer look at the year that was in the Motor City. And a new survey shows where GOP trust in elections stands after the big vote when Trump won. Has the meter moved at all? Well, take a look. All ahead. Plus, new year, new Congress, a Republican majority in both chambers, and soon a Republican president. We'll take a closer look at what happened during the first day of the 119th Congress. Plus, an all-star panel of familiar faces that you know well, looking at the divide within the majority party and really how 2024 shaped the next few months. We begin tonight with a major update on President-elect Trump's hush money conviction. A New York judge set his sentencing date for January 10th, just 10 days before he's inaugurated into office. The judge was trying to figure out whether his conviction should be tossed out after the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity, but today announced he'll sentence him to what's known as a conditional discharge. What does that mean? Well, it means Trump won't serve jail time. He will not go to jail, probation, or you won't even have to pay a fine. You see, Trump was convicted last May of falsifying business records to cover up payments to adult movie star Stormy Daniels. Trump has said he did nothing wrong. Now to the investigation into the terror attack in New Orleans that killed 14 people and hurt more than 2 dozen others. 13 people still in the hospital tonight after that driver plowed a pickup truck into a crowd early on New Year's Day. That driver, inspired by ISIS, was killed in a gunfight with police. 2 police officers injured because of this. President and First Lady Biden will be visiting New Orleans on Monday to meet with families of the victims. And the FBI was back at the suspect's Houston home today. Sources telling Fox News that authorities found bomb-making materials inside. The FBI is warning law enforcement across the country to stay vigilant. Look out about possible copycat attacks, something lawmakers are worried about as well.
I'm concerned that perhaps we're not looking enough at social media proactively. We've got to be more able to answer that kind of a threat in minutes, not in hours or days.
As you can imagine, security is top of mind for people right here in the Motor City. We have a lot going on. We have several huge events coming up. Think about it. We have this weekend's Lions game, which is a huge high-profile game, and the Detroit Auto Show, bringing in thousands of people, journalists from across the world here. We're asking you today if the New Orleans attack has changed your plans to attend big events here or elsewhere. Here's what some of you told us.
It definitely has me worried to attend large events. I don't like to attend them anymore because of the fact of what's going on around our country.
I don't really mind it, to be honest. I don't have an issue.
No, not for me. I can't think of any reason to.
It definitely crosses my mind every time I go to a large event. I have 3 young children, and even just them experiencing something, let alone getting hurt in such an attack, would absolutely devastate me, and I feel like them as well. So it absolutely crosses my mind anytime I think of large events.
We're also asking you the question on our website, fox2detroit.com. If you'd like to weigh in, just scan the QR code at the bottom right of your screen to vote. So far, look at that. Most of you say, no, the attack does not change your plans to attend large events. You know, we did ask former FBI Special Agent in Charge, Andy Arena, about his advice for people. And he says the biggest thing, look around.
As citizens, there's 2 things we can do. The old see something, say something, right? What we're going to find with these individuals, there were signs out there that were either missed, not shared, or people just blew it off. The other thing is, we have to live life, but you've got to be cognizant of the situation, of your surroundings. And I actually teach security courses on this, where I tell people, wherever you go, a restaurant, an event, church on Sunday, you've got to know if something happens, where are the exits? How am I going to get out of here? If I can't get out of here, where am I going to hide? And what weapons do I have? What things can I use to protect myself?
We also spoke with former Detroit Police Chief Ralph Godbee about how these investigations play out at a local level, as well as how they impact security planning for large-scale events like the auto show. To watch that full episode from last night, just scan the QR code on the bottom right of your screen. That episode will launch right there on your phone or your iPad. Well, back here at home, the Detroit Police Department is touting a massive decline in violent crime, one they say is historic. It's time to go by the numbers. Detroit police say 203 homicides last year. That's actually down 19%, and the lowest rate since 1965. Shootings that weren't deadly were down 25%. We're talking about 606 that were reported in all. And then there were carjackings that were down 15% year over year. But get this, they're actually down 71% since Project Green Light started back in 2015. You remember that? It got a lot of controversy. People talked about it for a while. Police say it's partnerships with courts, other law enforcement agencies, and community groups that have made just a huge difference.
We call participants, but these are community members that's participating in safety and healing. I want to honor the community as well. I want to honor the young men, young women who make the decision not to harm, who make the decision to reach out and try and resolve the conflict before it happens.
The change in this community in just a few years has been very special.
Now, the police chief also said the department's homicide clearance rate is 59%, 9 points above the national one. Take you out to Capitol Hill now. It's going to be a big one. It's a new year and a new Congress. The 119th Congress got to work. The Republicans in control of both chambers. And there's a new face in a new place. Look at this. South Dakota Senator John Thune is officially the top Republican in the Senate, replacing Kentucky's Mitch McConnell. Workers at the Capitol replaced the nameplate at the door of his office today in a kind of semi-ceremonial way, kind of showing the change there. Thune promised to preserve the filibuster, which senators can use to delay or block votes. Senators need 60 votes to end a filibuster for legislation. While there have been calls to get rid of it, including by President-elect Trump during his first term, Thune said he's keeping it. He wants to make sure the founder's vision of the Senate stays intact. And in the lower chamber, House Speaker Mike Johnson keeps the gavel. But as we've seen with the last few House Speaker votes, there was some fighting. There was some drama. He won on the first ballot, but he had to convince a couple of Republican holdouts to support him to keep the seat. That's despite President-elect Trump endorsing him to keep the gavel. Now, some far-right Republicans have been frustrated with Johnson, and some of his allies have turned against him over his handling of that Ukrainian aid bill and last month's short-term spending bill. He worked with Democrats to try to get that done. Johnson spoke after winning re-election, pushing immigration reform and shrinking the government.
What we're proposing now is just simply, as President Trump likes to say, a return to common sense. And he's exactly right. That message resonated across the country. I am very thankful, personally, that this body is filled with men and women who are committed to that change, to return to common sense. We can do this together. We should. It is our responsibility to do so.
Dramatic House Speaker votes have been a thing recently in Congress. You know that. Remember this? Then Congressman Kevin McCarthy was elected after 15 rounds of voting, which lasted nearly a week. And then McCarthy was voted out of his leadership role, which is how Johnson ended up getting the gavel. You may also remember McCarthy ended up resigning from Congress at the end of 2023. And while Republicans rule the roost, these past few House Speaker races show how many divides there are in the party. And it's leading to questions of how much they'll actually be able to get done. An all-star panel with a Democrat, Republican, and political science professor ready to roll. You're watching The Pulse here on Fox 2.
Now, they T-boned me.
Ethan, could you please count to 10? I just wanted to.
Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
And she gets T-boned, and then she all the Thanksgiving dinner, all the fixins, all the decorations, all the stuff were in her car. Oh no. The Southfield police helped transfer the stuff to a car into someone else's car who we don't know who it was, someone who heard about her accident, went to the scene. Back now on The Pulse, looking at all things people, power, and politics, and ready to dive into everything that the 119th Congress will be talking about and working on. And talking about all of this, an all-star panel. Troy Mayor Ethan Baker, a Republican who's a regular on The Pulse. You also know former State Representative Sherry Gay-Agnago, who's also a regular at Oakland University. It's a Friday. It just takes time. The words take time. The brain doesn't want to connect. Oakland University political science professor Dave Duilio, a man who doesn't need the introduction, but is here with us here today. Thank you all for joining us here on The Pulse today. Better luck than me for you to speak here today, but let's do this. Let's begin with the big news of the week. I want to begin with you, Mayor Baker. You saw the events that unfolded in New Orleans. So many lawmakers are saying they're worried about big events, small events. Just as an American, as a leader in our community, your thoughts on what you saw?
Well, first of all, my heart goes out to everybody in New Orleans. I know you have family there. I know Mayor Cantrell really well, and I think she's done a fantastic job of representing the people of her city through really an act of terror and a tragedy. It's every mayor's worst nightmare to get a call that something like this has happened, and I just know there's so many people impacted right now that are hurting, and it makes us all, rightfully on edge a little bit about what security measures we have in place and what we can do to make sure our citizens stay safe. And, the reality is we can only do so much. Nobody can do everything perfectly. As you can see, there's always going to people can find a way to do bad things. Our
unscientific poll indicated from everyone who voted, Sherry, that, 80% of the people who were polled on our poll said, hey, I'm not changing anything. Here in America, here in Detroit, here in New Orleans, wherever you are, we do what we do, and no one gets to win. The terrorists don't get to win. We have to do what we do. That didn't surprise you, did it?
No, it didn't surprise me, but in some ways, and I have to give my condolences to the family as well, and in all of New Orleans that are experiencing and reeling from this tragedy. But it kind of saddens me. And the reason I say that is we have to move forward with our lives, but sometimes I think we've become desensitized to these acts of terror, and I don't want us to forget what this is, what is happening, and then take away the priority to address it in a meaningful way, addressing the mental health issue as well as the security issue. And that's important because it can happen anywhere, anytime, any city, God forbid.
And Dave, I don't want to take away the sense of community and warmth that you have for America, but from a political science point of view, when a tragedy happens, we know right away politicians take a side and start talking about what needs to happen. We saw that with this tragedy as well.
We sure do. And first, let me say I co-sign all the comments from my colleagues here. I think it's just the politics that we're in right now, where it seems to be even something that is not divisive, right? Where we're all concerned about the people of New Orleans. We're all concerned about the families. Nobody wants to see this happen, yet people try to score political points from it. And I think that's something that we shouldn't reward when we see that happen on social media, right? If people are posting about that, I think American citizens should call that out, right? And say, look, that's not how we handle this stuff.
No, we all have a voice, and the voice that we have that we take so much pride in, so much of that lies in Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. If you see something that's objectionable, say something to make sure that you stop that. My family, all my in-laws, we checked on them, but my nieces and nephews are all home from college, and they were walking around near the French Quarter, and it just is such a shocking thing for all of us.
Area.
It is, but let's move forward and talk about something that is far more trivial and less important in so many ways when you talk about the loss of 14 lives. But life, and as we know it, is going to change politically with the 119th Congress that, of course, is taking shape. Let's talk about Speaker Mike Johnson. What a difference, Dave Duilio. We saw with McCarthy, it took way longer than that, in 15 different votes. Were you surprised that they were able to kind of figure this out as quickly as they did?
No, I think, while we have politicians and elected officials who may try to serve some self-interest these days, even in the topic that we just covered, right? I think Republicans learned their lesson from the McCarthy mistake. And they wanted to show a little resistance to Speaker Johnson. Certainly some of those on the right, like Representative Roy and Representative Massey, who did vote against Speaker Johnson. But they proved their point. They showed their power, and they were just ready to get on and get it over with and move on.
And that's exactly what they did, to not make a splash, not make headlines, to introduce this Congress in a way that shows America that they can get work done, because that's an important message. Sherry, though, we know that one of the big reasons that Speaker Johnson, there was such an umbrage to the work that he had done is because he had worked so closely with Democrats to prevent a government shutdown, and some of the funding in those bills, perhaps questionable to some Republicans. But does that still shake you a little bit to know that someone who simply was trying to work with the other party was nudged and pushed, and someone tried to push him down because of that?
Well, so I expect that. I mean, we have such a huge partisan divide sometimes to our own demise as citizens in this country. And I think it's incumbent upon all of those who are elected to realize, like Leader Hakeem Jeffries pointed out today, there is a time to campaign, and now there's a time to govern, and it's time to govern. It's interesting, though, that we saw real time how the sausages are made. And so 2 Congress members had to go out, have a conversation, make a phone call, and whether you like President Trump or not, what we saw today is a part of leadership. And if you think back of the closure of the legislative session in Michigan, we could have used some of that leadership.
You're saying leadership from President-elect Trump.
Absolutely.
To actually push some lawmakers into the right place.
Absolutely. Like, look, it's not time to play games. Let's get this done. If you mess up the timeline, you're going to mess up my swearing in. So let's get it together. I don't know what they were promised.
That might have been the key.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, because we know, Sherry, Dave, and Ethan, that if a speaker is not present, you cannot certify the votes. And of course, his inauguration would have taken place, and there wouldn't have been a certification until they had a speaker. Ethan, a little bit of Mayor Baker. You're a Republican. We should point out that he's in a nonpartisan role as in the capacity of being mayor of New Orleans. Again, I need coffee. Mayor of Troy. But when you talk a little bit about what Trump's influence has been here, it's pretty incredible. But the political calculus around falling in line with what Trump wants is an important one to keep in mind. People have to please President Trump if they want to win midterms in the future, right?
I think so, although often it doesn't work. Like he's tried another times and it's not actually worked out. He hasn't gotten what he wanted, but I'm thankful as a Republican that this did work out, because we couldn't take a McCarthy mistake again. It would have been a catastrophe going in with all 3 branches essentially controlled by Republicans now. And so, yeah, I think you want to please President Trump to a certain extent. You want to give him the benefit of the doubt, no matter what kind of Republican you are, because you want to be on the right side of, trying to move things forward for your constituents. And yeah, you don't want to get primaried in a midterm. Even if you likely could win, you're going to spend a ton of money in a primary that you don't want to spend. You're going to get beat up unnecessarily. And it's just not worth it. But yeah, I'm really thankful that it worked out.
When you see what happened, there was kind of 2 schools of Republicans: the old school Republicans, the MAGA Republicans. President Trump wins. Now we have basically the party of Donald Trump. But within that party, it seems like there are still some, as we've seen here, that are more extreme than even Trump.
Factions within political parties are nothing new, right? We've seen this over history, and we've even seen it recently here in Michigan.
Yes.
I think there's no doubt about that on both sides of the aisle.
Absolutely.
And what is making them even more important now is the era of thin majorities that we live in. And Michigan Democrats found that out at the end of last session, as you pointed out, right? They couldn't get their act together, and they missed a huge opportunity to
huge. Especially for the African American community.
Absolutely, certainly. And I think that Republicans need to temper their expectations, because this is going to be a tough 2 years with a very, very thin majority in the U.S. House, a non-filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. Senator Thune is committed to keeping it. Wouldn't Republicans like it if Democrats had killed it last time around, right? So it's this thin majority in both chambers, and in Washington and here in Michigan that we're going to see, that is going to make it really tough to be effective in that governing period.
Or it's going to force a level of collaboration where we can get things done. And I have real confidence in Hakeem Jeffries and just their speeches today. Maybe this is the honeymoon.
Sure.
But
it's early.
It is the honeymoon, Sherry. I just tell you, but that's okay.
We have about 30 seconds left. Let's talk about the Democrats, because, by the way, for us to pretend that there's some kind of a rift only within the Republican Party is ridiculous. We had a disaster of a campaign from the Kamala Harris camp. Everyone thought it would be one thing. It turned out to be something very different. Let's start with you, Sherry, and go through for about 10 seconds a pop the work that Democrats have to do lying ahead.
They have to start listening to the people, and the messaging has been off for quite some time, and we're not a monolithic party. The African American community messaging, it never resonate. The constant talking about abortion, not addressing the issues of the economy, that's what lost the election.
Ethan, Mayor Ethan Baker, your thoughts on the Democratic Party and what they have to learn moving forward?
Oh, I think Sherry's exactly right. I mean, everybody is very different. We're not all one monolithic people or group of people, so you got to look at everybody. And you can't take people for granted, and I think that's what's happened.
No doubt about it. I'll just say one thing real quick, is that find places where you can agree and start from there.
20,000 Detroiters decided to vote for Donald Trump. Dearborn and Dearborn Heights, and large numbers did the same. And today on TV, Sherry Gadegnago said Donald Trump showed excellent leadership. So 2025 is shaping up to be very effective. And speaking of Congress, there's a move the Surgeon General wants them to make involving booze. The new warning label he wants to see on the bottle. That's next on The Pulse. And we thank our guests for joining us here tonight. And welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show covering people, power, and politics, The Pulse. And a move by the outgoing Surgeon General is targeting something you might indulge in this weekend: alcohol. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy wants a label warning that alcohol is a leading cause of cancer, saying that Americans should be more informed about the link between the booze and the disease. This comes as research and evidence mounts about how bad alcohol is for our health. Congress could approve getting that warning label on the bottle, but whether it will make a difference in people's choices, well, some aren't so sure.
Don't think it will make any difference. If people want to drink, they will drink regardless of any warnings. It's like with the smoking.
Well, I think even though it might not help, it might make people stop and, take a second thought about it. So in that respect, it may help a little bit.
Research has found drinking alcohol raises the risk of getting at least 7 types of cancer, including liver, breast, and throat cancers. There's already a label that says pregnant women shouldn't drink alcohol and that it can hurt your ability to drive a car. Staying in Washington, President Biden gave 8 public safety officers the country's highest award for valor. It's called the Medal of Valor, and the recipients include a Nebraska sergeant who saved a drowning woman, 2 New York City firefighters, and 5 responders to the deadly Nashville school shooting. They helped subdue a former student who killed 6 people.
There's a lot fewer empty chairs around the kitchen table and dining room table because of what these guys did. And what they did is amazing. They literally put their lives at risk, some of them at the point that you wonder how they could have had the nerve to do it. So thank you guys, I really mean it. You're the best America has to offer. I'm so damn proud to stand with you.
The president also thanked the spouses of the people awarded the medal for their support and bravery. President Biden is also honoring the 2 people who led the congressional investigation into this dark day in our nation's history, the January 6th insurrection. Democratic Congressman Benny Thompson and former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney were awarded the Presidential Citizens Medal. It's the second highest civilian medal a president can give. The committee accused Trump of engaging in a multi-part conspiracy to overturn his election loss and failing to stop the mob from attacking the Capitol. Biden is considering pardoning Cheney and others President-elect Trump and his allies have threatened to punish. And finally tonight, before the last election, there was a lot of talk about trust in elections, especially after then President Trump made claims of voter fraud after his 2020 election loss. And a new poll shows things have changed for the GOP since Trump got elected to a second term in November. Let's go by the numbers here on the screen. Check it out. This is from a recent poll by NORC. Now, in October, just before the vote, just 2 in 10 Republicans said they were confident votes would be counted actually accurately. And just 4 in 10 were confident in their state's vote. Fast forward to now it's 6 in 10 say they either have a great deal or quite a bit of confidence in the nationwide accuracy of voting, and roughly 2/3 say they're confident in their state's vote. Now, we should point out again, there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 vote, despite the now president-elect's claims. That is the Pulse on this Friday night. Remember, you can always get in touch with me right here on my phone. Email me your burning political questions or your general comments, good or bad. The email's right at the bottom of your screen. You can use your QR code or you can just email me directly. Your comment could end up on the TV. I'm Roop Raj. Have a great weekend. And of course, as we always say, go Lions.